A princess groomed for destiny. A prince raised for duty. Nobody expected this. A royal wedding, across two kingdoms, announced in a single breath. Europe stunned, families shaken, and the love story, nothing like anyone imagined. Just announced, Princess Leonor and Prince Christian's royal wedding shocks Europe. In this imagined royal story, everything begins with a whisper. A whisper so soft, so improbable, that even seasoned royal watchers dismissed it as fantasy. Princess Leonor of Spain and Prince Christian of Denmark, two heirs, two futures, two nations, brought together by something far stronger than diplomacy. Something no palace strategist could have predicted. And when the announcement broke, Europe didn't just react. It erupted. For years, Leonor and Christian lived parallel lives across the continent. She, the poised crowned princess of Spain, navigating tradition with modern determination. He, Denmark's steady future king, quietly preparing for the weight of his throne. Their worlds seemed separate, until they collided behind palace doors, far from the cameras, far from the pressures that had shaped them from birth. But why did the announcement shock Europe so deeply? Why did this union ignite fascination, controversy, celebration, and tension all at once? And why, even now, are fans replaying every detail, searching for clues they may have missed? The answer begins long before the engagement. It begins with two families carrying centuries of expectations, and two young royals who dared to choose something unexpected, each other. Rumors began when Leonor attended an international youth summit in Copenhagen, a seemingly routine appearance, nothing out of the ordinary. But witnesses later described a moment, an exchange of glances between the Spanish princess and Denmark's prince. Brief, almost imperceptible, but charged with a spark neither tried to hide. For the first time, two heirs did not seem like symbols. They seemed like teenagers discovering possibility. Royal insiders claimed the connection grew slowly at first, friendly messages, polite formalities, shared appearances. But something shifted during a private royal gathering months later. Away from the crowds, without cameras tracing their every move, Leonor and Christian found themselves lingering in conversation. Laughing, standing closer than protocol would approve. Not as future monarchs, but as two young adults realizing they understood each other more deeply than they expected. Still, nobody predicted love. Nobody expected a bond powerful enough to reshape the future of two monarchies. That's why the announcement hit with the force of an earthquake. Spain woke to breaking headlines. Denmark's newsrooms scrambled. Across Europe, phones buzzed, timelines flooded, and commentators raced to interpret the meaning of what had just happened. A joint statement from both royal houses, formal, concise, but unmistakably emotional, confirmed what seemed impossible. Princess Leonor of Spain and Prince Christian of Denmark were engaged. The shock didn't come from scandal. It came from history. No two future monarchs of reigning European families had married each other in generations. The political implications were enormous. The symbolism, unprecedented. And the emotional impact, immeasurable. Fans didn't simply react. They exploded with excitement. Edits of the couple flooded social media within minutes. Fan art, speculative wedding designs, imagined royal portraits, hundreds of thousands of posts appeared before the first press briefing even ended. Royal watchers dissected every past encounter, convinced they'd always known. But inside the palaces, reactions were far more complicated. In Spain, advisors worried. Leonor was preparing to become a queen who represented modern stability. Would this marriage strengthen her position, or overshadow it? Could love complicate diplomacy? And what would it mean for the Spanish public, who viewed her as the embodiment of national continuity? In Denmark, concerns ran just as deep. Christian was the hope of a monarchy facing its own pressures, its own expectations. Would marrying another heir create confusion? Was this a beautiful partnership, or a geopolitical entanglement no one had planned for? Yet, even amidst concern, something else emerged. Something more powerful. Joy. Royal families across Europe sent congratulations. Old alliances warmed. The public, overwhelmed by the sincerity of the couple's announcement, responded with affection rather than suspicion. People saw what advisors sometimes forgot, the human story beneath the royal roles. And that human story, gentle, natural, transformative, became the beating heart of the narrative. Leonor and Christian were not marrying for duty. Not for strategy. Not for optics. They were marrying for love. But love, in royal context, always meets resistance. Some critics argued the marriage blurred national lines too much. Others claimed it was a distraction from political issues. A few even questioned whether two heirs should ever unite romantically. But every argument crumbled when the couple finally addressed the world together. They appeared side by side at a joint press conference in Madrid. She, in a simple pale dress. He, in a fitted navy suit. No theatrics. No grand display. Just two young rulers in the making, holding hands with quiet confidence. Leonor, always composed, spoke first. She acknowledged the weight of her role, the responsibility she carried, and the expectations she respected. But she also shared something rare, that love had found her unexpectedly, gently, and profoundly, and she would not ignore it out of fear or tradition. Christian followed with a message equally heartfelt. He spoke about unity, not as political ambition but as emotional truth. He admired Leonor not as a princess, but as a person, sharp, compassionate, determined, and kind. His voice wavered, just slightly, when he spoke of wanting a partner who understood the gravity of royal life, someone who walked the same tightrope he did every day. Leonor was that person, and together, they were choosing a future built not on obligation, but on partnership. That moment changed everything. The world saw their sincerity, their vulnerability, their honesty. And suddenly, what had been shocking became inspiring. The planning began almost immediately. Two royal houses collaborating on a wedding that would intertwine traditions from Spain and Denmark. Two cultures, two histories, two identities becoming one story. Weeks turned into months as designers, historians, and ceremonial experts worked in secret to craft an event worthy of both nations. But beneath the preparations lay a quieter narrative, one far more intimate. Leonor visited Copenhagen often, slipping into a version of life rarely seen. She laughed more freely there. She explored the city with Christian, discovering cafes, parks, and corners of Denmark where she could be anonymous for a few moments. Christian, in turn, traveled to Madrid, walking through palaces and plazas that shaped Leonor's childhood. They met each other's friends, their extended families, their private worlds. They weren't just preparing for a royal wedding. They were preparing for a shared life. Still, tension rose behind palace doors. Both families had to negotiate the delicate question, where would they live? Who would ascend first? Would either step back? Would their children one day inherit two thrones, or neither? These discussions, though private, were unavoidable. And, at times, emotional. Leonor's devotion to Spain was unwavering. She was raised knowing one day she would reign. Christian felt the same about Denmark. Neither wanted to sacrifice their future. And neither wanted the other to. The solution emerged slowly, organically, through countless late-night conversations between the two. They would support each other's reigns, but never merge them. They would build a marriage across borders, with homes in both nations. And they would raise children who understood that duty and love could coexist without hierarchy. It was unconventional, bold, unprecedented, but it was theirs. As the wedding approached, public excitement reached a fever pitch. The guest list alone captivated royal watchers, monarchs, heirs, state leaders, and figures from every European dynasty. The fusion of Spanish majesty and Danish elegance promised a ceremony unlike any in recent memory. And on the morning of the wedding, Europe seemed to pause. Spain's streets filled with flags. Denmark's bells rang in celebration. Millions tuned in, some waking before dawn, others gathering for viewing parties. Screens across continents flickered with anticipation. Then she appeared. Princess Leonor stepped out of the palace in a gown that looked as if it were woven from radiance itself. Not overly ornate, not extravagantly modern, just breathtaking. A silhouette inspired by centuries of Spanish court fashion, softened by Danish minimalism. Her tiara, an heirloom passed through generations, glittered with ceremony and sentiment. The crowd gasped. Social feeds erupted. Fans replayed every moment. Christian waited at the altar, his posture strong yet visibly emotional. When Leonor entered the chapel, his expression shifted, shock, awe, devotion. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the diplomats. He looked only at her. The ceremony blended two worlds seamlessly. Spanish hymns filled the air with warmth. Danish choirs echoed softness and clarity. Priests from both traditions offered blessings. Families from both nations exchanged glances of pride, nostalgia, and profound hope. The vows were simple, personal, raw with feeling. Leonor promised loyalty, not just to Christian, but to the life they would build across two thrones. Christian promised presence, not just in the grand moments, but in the quiet ones, where real love is forged. When they sealed their vows with a kiss, the world exhaled. Bells rang across Madrid and Copenhagen. The cheers outside the chapel rolled like a wave. For a moment, just a moment, two nations felt united in pure celebration. The reception that followed was a masterpiece of tradition and modernity. Danish musicians played alongside Spanish guitarists. Flamenco dancers shared the stage with Nordic folk performers. Cakes from both nations stood side by side, one towering, royal, ornate, the other sleek, sculptural, minimalist. But the highlight was the couple's first dance. A soft, glowing light washed over the hall as they took their positions. The music began, gentle, intimate, heartfelt. Leonor's hand rested in Christian's. Their movements synced effortlessly. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not diplomacy, not succession, not duty, just two hearts choosing each other. Fans replay this moment endlessly, searching for the subtle smiles, the whispered words, the quiet tenderness between them. And every time, the magic remains. As the night deepened, speeches followed, some emotional, some humorous, all sincere. Leonor's father spoke of watching his daughter grow from heir to leader to bride. Christian's mother recalled the day he first mentioned Leonor, his voice brighter than she'd ever heard it. Heads of state toasted unity. Cousins teased childhood memories. The families, once cautious, now felt woven together. By the time the couple stepped onto the palace balcony, newly married and glowing under the night sky, Europe witnessed a scene that would be replayed for generations. The cheers below shook the streets. The lights above shimmered. And when Leonor and Christian shared a final, gentle kiss, the cameras captured an image destined to define a new era of royalty. This was not just a wedding. Not just a union. Not just breaking news. It was the beginning of a story that no one predicted, yet everyone now believes in. A love strong enough to surprise two nations. A partnership powerful enough to shape the future. A moment so breathtaking that fans still can't recover. Princess Leonor and Prince Christian. Heirs. Partners. Now, husband and wife. Europe will never be the same.